Our first story for today comes from Bleeping Computer, and the title here is Otelier Data Breach Exposes Info Hotel Reservations of Millions. So the story here is that back in July of 2024, way back in 2024, this company named Otelier, which is a hotel service company that's used by many well-known hotel brands like Marriott, Hilton, and Hyatt. And apparently they store all sorts of sensitive data in S3 buckets. Happened here is that a adversary was able to obtain credentials to access the data in that bucket, and it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 terabytes of customer data spanning multiple different hotel brands. And that happened as a result of a credential phish or credential stealing malware. It's a little unclear exactly how the initial credential theft occurred, but apparently the credentials were stolen for their Atlassian, for this company's Atlassian instance, and that Atlassian instance allegedly contained the credentials to the S3 bucket. And we know this because the adversary here apparently was discussing this with the reporter here on Bleeping Computer. And then they also found some corroborating information on one of the threat intelligence providers that showed credentials had been obtained for this hotelier company. So it's a little unclear exactly how many individual people were impacted, but it's believed to be in the millions. As far as I could tell.
Yeah, it feels just like another day, another data breach. But the way I read this, though, it sounds like the bad actors got access to Atlassian, which if you don't know Atlassian, you might know it by like Confluence or Jira or a few other apps. That's what they're best known for. So it sounds like they got into the Atlassian servers, guessing they were the cloud version, and looked through there for tickets or Confluence articles that had credentials and went to town. So maybe don't store your credentials in your Jira tickets. Crazy idea, I know.
I think that, again, we're hypothesizing here, so just take that with a grain of salt. But the initial credential phish was probably exacerbated by lack of two-factor authentication, right? Given the way this is described, which is that it was stolen via credential harvesting malware on devices, it is quite likely that even traditional multi-factor authentication would have been effective at preventing this. But again, it's a little difficult to say without knowing the specifics about how it happened. But then, as you said, once they had that access, they were able to get access to the credentials to the S3 bucket. So I think the other issues we've said in the past repeatedly now, especially with cloud services where things are spread out on the internet, but this certainly applies broadly to everything. Better credential management is becoming really imperative. So having that sort of thing, in my experience and where I have been responsible, would have been stored in some sort of a password vault where you would have had to have access, logical access to check out an ID to ultimately get access to that S3 bucket. Now, again, we don't know all the details here, but it certainly looks like there were opportunities to prevent this. I think one of the challenges, and this is playing the other side, right? From an efficiency standpoint, we often take the easy way. And so my strong suspicion is that they were storing a list of resources with their associated access credentials, like S3 buckets. And they did that as just as a time saving and an efficiency thing. And until something like this happens, I don't think it's a lot of thought by many IT teams.
Well, it was very efficient for the bad actors.
Yeah. I think that's what irritates me, is that we all seem to learn the same lesson over and over and over again. And which I guess is why we're here doing this podcast, but it just seems like there's a lot of opportunity to do it better so this doesn't happen.
Yeah, I would agree. Put your secrets in a password vault and then post the password to the password vault in your Atlassian server.
That's true. Or if you do like everybody else, you just leave your S3 buckets open to the internet, and that way they don't actually have to hack in and steal credentials. They can just access the data. It's kind of like, the stories about people who leave their cars open so that the bad guys don't have to smash out the windows to try to steal stuff.
Look, you do what you got to do.
Right.
It is also interesting that 7.8 terabytes of data was transferred out unnoticed. There's a few opportunities for detection here that I think were missed.
Yep. There's a little more information. 39 million rows in a reservations table and a user table containing 212 million rows, which with 1.3 million unique email addresses among the 212 million. So
That's a lot of data.
that's a heck of a lot of data.